Taipeng is a real rich kid. He is the heir of the Taipeng Trading Company. That's a name that means storm. People say that Taipeng is a walking storm because wherever he goes, there is chaos. That night, because of a phone call, Taipeng left the hospital while taking care of his father. Just a few minutes later, Taipeng received news that his father had passed away. His father was the owner of the Taipeng Trading Company. It was a small and medium-sized enterprise that he built himself. All his life, Taipeng's father lived hard and had principles. The only thing that worried him was his only son. Because Taipeng never grew up, Taipeng only knew how to party and cause trouble everywhere. That day, Taipeng went into the wrong VIP room in the bar. When Taipeng realized it, he was about to leave, but a girl suddenly rushed over and hugged Taipeng. It turns out that this girl's name is Ju Rim. She has secretly liked Taipeng since 8th grade. Before Taipeng could finish his sentence, Hun Chen suddenly became angry. Hun Chen smashed and knocked over things on the table. Taipeng saw that and said he would pay all the expenses. But Hun Chen was still angry. Hun Chen picked up the glass of wine and threw it straight at Taipeng's face. The broken glass made a long cut on Taipeng's cheek. Taipeng tried to suppress his anger and said that the two of them were even. Then Taipeng was about to leave. At that moment, the waiter entered the room. Hun Chen turned to hit the waiter again to vent his anger. But Taipeng couldn't stand the sight, so he immediately rushed up to stop him. Then Taipeng was hit in the head by Hun Chen. Blood from the wound dripped onto Taipeng's new shirt. This made Taipeng extremely angry. Taipeng kicked Hun Chen, causing him to fall to the ground. Nam Do, Taipeng's best friend, also rushed in to help. The nightclub became chaotic. The police quickly arrived and took everyone to the police station. The police announced that since both sides had intervened, they could let it go if everyone reconciled. However, the bar sued them for obstruction of business and property damage. The most important thing now was to quickly negotiate a settlement. However, Taipeng's father firmly refused. He said that Taipeng had made a mistake, so of course Taipeng had to be punished. The police reminded him that if Taipeng's father did that, his son would have a criminal record. Taipeng's father coldly replied that the police should say that to the person who caused the trouble. After Taipeng's father finished speaking, he pulled his wife out of the police station. But at this moment, he met Baiko, Hun Chen's father. Baiko was a business partner of Taipeng's father. Baiko told Taipeng's father that everything had been handled properly so Taipeng's father could rest assured and go home. Seeing Baiko about to leave, Taipeng hurriedly chased after him and said that there was no need to worry too much about the money last time. Baiko only replied, "Do cats know how to think for mice?" After Taipeng's father sent Baiko off, he turned to teach his son. Taipeng did not feel any remorse at all. Taipeng even opened his mouth to ask for 10,000 won. Taipeng's father was angry and slapped his son. Taipeng only glanced at his father and then turned away. Taipeng took the train to Incheon. There was a greenhouse there, where Taipeng personally bred each rose. Taipeng resentfully said that today was the first time his father had beaten him, and his father did not even ask why Taipeng fought. Since he was little, Taipeng had dreamed of becoming a florist. Taipeng hopes one day he can show off his achievements to his father, but Taipeng did not know that the opportunity would never come. The next morning, Taipeng took the train back to Seoul. Because Taipeng did not sleep all night, he fell asleep on the train. The girl standing opposite saw that scene and smiled slightly. She was an employee of Taipeng's company. Her name was Mi-son. No one expected that later Mi-son would have a close relationship with Taipeng. Although Taipeng's father always acted cold, after he beat his son last night, he was so sad that he could not sleep all night. Early in the morning, Taipeng's father quietly went into the room and pulled the blanket over his son. Taipeng's mother advised her husband that if he really cared about his son, he should buy Taipeng a car. Taipeng's father immediately got angry when he heard that, but Taipeng's mother said that in this area, only Taipeng did not have a car, and only Taipeng was willing to shine his father's shoes. Taipeng's father said angrily that he didn't ask his son to do that, but in fact he felt an indescribable warmth in his heart. On the way to work, Taipeng's father's shoes were splashed with dirty water. He immediately took out a handkerchief to wipe his shoes. Today, Taipeng's father gave bonuses to the employees because last month's cooperation with Daebang Textile Company had brought in high profits. Everyone was happy to have a generous boss. At that moment, Daebang Textile Company called to inform them that they wanted to place more orders. The employees were happy and cheered with excitement when they heard that. But Taipeng's father felt a lot of pressure. He informed everyone that the partner required payment in advance. The quantity that Daebang wanted to order was so large that Taipeng's father was afraid that the company would have difficulty meeting it. The employees thought that Daebang was a large company, so this was a rare opportunity. If Taipeng Company wanted to expand, they would also need large transactions. Taipeng's father turned to Mi-son for advice. advice. She thought for a moment and then said that the company should not sign the contract with Daebang. She analyzed that the profit looked high, but in fact the profit had been deducted from the bank loan interest because the company had to pay the producer in advance. Taepeng's father nodded in agreement after hearing this, but when he saw the expectant eyes of his employees, he still decided to sign the contract. Meanwhile, Taepeng was dragged by Nam-do to participate in a dating show. Actually, the original invitee was Jun's son, but he had been missing for several days. Taepeng had to become a replacement. With his handsome appearance and attractive charisma, Taepeng immediately became the center of attention of the girls. Taepeng and Nam-do sang, danced and played their hearts out on stage together. No one knew that behind that smile, fate had quietly changed the direction of their lives. That day when Taepeng was walking on the street, he accidentally met Hun Chun and Ju Rim again. When Ju Rim heard that Taepeng had just participated in a dating show, she immediately got out of the car and asked why Taepeng didn't date her. Hun Chun was very angry when he heard that. He immediately raised his hand to hit Ju Rim and then pulled her into the car. Taepeng saw that and quickly ran to stop him. Hun Chun coldly got in the car, he started the engine and drove straight towards Taepeng. Seeing that Taepeng didn't avoid him, Hun Chun had no choice but to turn the wheel and leave. But hatred was born in his heart. After Taepeng sent Ju Rim home, he immediately went to meet his close friends. Nam-do told him that Jun Sung's family had gone bankrupt and his whole family had disappeared without a trace. Taepeng immediately ran to Jun Sung's house. Here, Taepeng met Jun Sung secretly. Looking back at the house one last time, Jun Sung told Taepeng to stay away from him or else Taepeng would also be in trouble. Jun Sung said that it was because his family was too trusting that they lost everything. Now, money is what decides everything. Because Taepeng saw that Jun Sung was determined to leave, Taepeng took all the money he had on him, took off his gold chain and watch and gave them to Jun Sung. On the way home, Taepeng saw his father drinking alone in a roadside restaurant. He looked lonely and very tired. At the same time, the economic crisis broke out in Korea. Because Taepeng's father had transferred all the money to pay his partner in Italy, he was temporarily unable to pay his employees. After Taepeng's father announced that he could not pay his employees, he suddenly collapsed in the office. Mi-san discovered something unusual and immediately ran in. After that, Taepeng's father was immediately taken to the hospital. When Taepeng heard the news, he also ran to the hospital as fast as he could. Taepeng accidentally bumped into Mi-san in the lobby. When Taepeng met his mother, he appeared calm. Taepeng comforted his mother that his father would definitely be fine. After the doctor examined him, he announced that Taepeng's father's condition was currently stable, but the doctor was not sure that it was a good sign, so they asked Taepeng's father to continue monitoring his health. Taepeng wanted to stay and take care of his father, but at that moment, Taepeng received a message that Jun Sung was captured by Hun Chun. Nam-do and Taepeng's friends were also dragged there. Ju Rim was also taken to Hun Chun's private room. After hearing this, Taepeng immediately gave his phone number to the nurse. Taepeng told the nurse that if there was an emergency, the nurse should call him immediately. Then Taepeng ran quickly to the bar. Meanwhile, Mi-san cooked rice and brought it to the hospital for Taepeng's father. Although he hadn't paid her this month, he had helped Mi-san pay her sister's tuition before, so she was always grateful to Taepeng's father. When Mi-san arrived, only Taepeng's father was left in the room. He opened his eyes weakly and called her. After Taepeng's father said a few final words, he passed away forever. When Taepeng arrived at the bar, he realized he had been tricked. It turned out that Hun Chun had asked someone to lure Taepeng here. Before Taepeng could react, Nam-do ran over in panic. Nam-do asked why Taepeng wasn't looking at his phone. Taepeng should go to the hospital now. When Taepeng heard that, he knew something was wrong. Taepeng ran back to the hospital immediately, but it was too late. His mother burst into tears, blaming Taepeng for not knowing where he had gone until his father passed away. Taepeng collapsed on the cold ground. Taepeng couldn't believe that his father had left forever. The death of Taepeng's father made all the employees feel sorry, but only Taepeng could not shed a single tear. Taepeng could only stomp on the pager. Now, Taepeng's words of love for his father would become something he could never say again. When the pain had not yet subsided, someone came to the funeral to harass him. Director Choi, Taepeng's father's business partner, came to the funeral to collect debt. Mr. Choi wanted to take the condolence money to deduct from the debt. The angry employees rushed to stop him. The two sides had a conflict right in the middle of the funeral. Taepeng stepped out and told them to just give the money to Mr. Choi. Taepeng sarcastically said that the business partner was so cold that he didn't even have time to say goodbye for a few coins. But Director Choi still ordered someone to take all the condolence money. At that moment, Mi-san stood up and said that the payment period was 70 days, and the postmark date printed on the invoice must must be used as the standard. The date on it was September 18th. That meant that the debt was still valid. Furthermore, the money from the funeral did not belong to the company but was the private property of Taepung's family. If Director Choi deliberately took that money, it would be an act of theft. Just as Director Choi was about to scold Misun, Baeko walked in. Baeko put down a large bag of money and bowed his head for a long time. Misun suddenly remembered that Baeko had gone to the hospital to see Taepung's father before he passed away. At that time, Baeko seemed very confused. Baeko kept asking Taepung's father, "Where? Tell me where." Baeko left the room just as Misun arrived, so she saw the scene with her own eyes. When the funeral ended, Taepung drove his mother home. Taepung tried to comfort his mother not to worry because Taepung could do anything. He was just not good at parking. But I have to admit, Taepung's driving skills are really poor. Taepung almost crashed into the car parked behind him. The economic crisis is getting worse and worse. The news reports about bankrupt companies and layoffs every day. The whole of Korea is in a panic. However, Taepung doesn't seem to realize the full extent of the crisis. Taepung just wants to go to the company to get his father's things to bring back. Taepung dresses neatly when he enters the company, but his way of dressing is a bit strange. Everyone is startled when they see Taepung. Taepung politely greets each person, then he goes straight to his father's office. Everything here is still the same. The objects here all carry the warmth of Taepung's father. When Taepung looks at that photo, he can't help but be moved. Outside, the employees are discussing whether they should tell Taepung about the contract with Daebang Company. Because Taepung's father not only paid the advance out of his own pocket, but the employees had not received their salaries for several months, everyone thought that they should wait until the delivery was completed before giving Taepung their share of the profits. Because the employees were afraid that Taepung would mess things up. At that moment, Director Choi came to collect the debt again. Mr. Choi loudly demanded that the company pay immediately because the deadline was September 18th. This time, Director Choi also brought a guarantee commitment. If the company could not pay, someone had to sign and take responsibility. When Taepung heard the argument, he immediately stepped out and declared that from today on, he was officially an employee of the company. After Taepung finished speaking, he signed the commitment. Director Choi immediately ran straight into the office. He took the lease contract. Taepung was responsible for getting it back. The employees in the company were talking excitedly. Everyone thought that Taepung was too reckless. Only Mi-san quietly took out the new employee information form. She asked Taepung to fill it out. That evening, when Taepung returned home, he realized that the lights in the house were off. The phone cord was also unplugged by Taepung's mother. Taepung didn't understand what was happening. Only when Taepung plugged the phone back in did he realize that it was because the creditor kept calling. His mother didn't want Taepung to worry, so she could only silently endure. The whole family was now so poor that they didn't have money to turn on the heater, so Taepung and his mother had to sleep together under an old fur coat. When Taepung looked at the family photo, he was heartbroken, not understanding why everything had collapsed so quickly. Suddenly, Taepung's hand touched something hard behind the photo frame. It turned out to be a key. Taepung immediately searched everywhere. Finally, he opened a cabinet. Inside the cabinet was a safe, but the safe needed a password to open. Taepung tried many times but still couldn't open it. He told Namdo about this. Namdo told Tung absolutely not to tell anyone. Then Namdo asked Taepung what he really planned to do at the company. Taepung replied that after finishing this, he would go back to growing flowers. Namdo shared that his mother had just been forced to quit her job, so her spirit was very bad. Luckily, Namdo had just passed the preliminary round of the singer selection program. If selected, Namdo would officially debut. Taepung heard that and shouted happily that his friend was about to become a singer. Hoon-chun heard that shout and mocked him, saying that Taepung's family had gone bankrupt and was still dreaming. However, this time, Taepung didn't get angry, but just silently left with Namdo. The next morning, Taepung came to the company and saw that everyone was busy. Only Taepung was confused and didn't know where to start. During the meeting, Taepung asked only one question: what are the four most important numbers of the company? This question made everyone lose interest and leave. During lunch break, everyone went out to eat fish soup. Taepung said that he just wanted to eat hamburgers, and he was immediately ridiculed by everyone because he did not understand the basic rules of office life. After everyone left, Mi-sun told Taepung that the most important number was 2072 because that was Taepung's father's wish. He wanted Taepung's company to last forever. When Taepung asked Mi-sun if she liked fish soup, she replied that even if she did not like it, she still had to eat it because working in the company meant working together. That was also part of the job. That night, Taepung opened the safe with the four numbers 2072. Inside were full of savings books. Most of them had the names of employees in the company. The last book had Taepeng's name on it. In it, Taepeng's father wrote, "I support your dream because you are always the person I love the most." Taepeng read that and burst into tears. Taepeng realized how deep his father's love was. Taepeng was determined to fulfill his father's unfinished dream. The next day when Taepeng came to the company, he took the initiative to have lunch with everyone. Then Taepeng asked Mi-sun to show him how to work. Taepeng really wanted to be a part of the company. At this time, Mi-sun recounted Taepeng's father's last words. He believed that his son would do very well, so he hoped Mi-sun would help Taepeng. Taepeng thanked her for seeing his father off to the end. Taepeng walked out into the hallway, and when he held the savings book in his hand, his tears flowed uncontrollably. From that day on, Taepeng really changed. When it was time to deliver some Daebang products, he volunteered to go with the inspection team. Because the fax machine was broken, Mi-sun had to go along. At the dock, they supervised the loading together. Before the truck departed, Majin secretly slipped a package to the driver, Manbok, and told Manbok not to pay any attention to Taepeng because Taepeng wouldn't last long. However, Manbok told Taepeng that no matter how hard it was, he had to persevere, and one day he would see the light again. Taepeng nodded, and then Taepeng drove Mi-sun to Daebang Company. They arrived before the truck. The Daebang staff welcomed the two of them very enthusiastically. Taepeng politely said that he had heard that the company was a long-standing business. The staff also smiled and replied that he had worked here for more than 30 years. After that, the staff went inside to get the stamp and invoice. Taepeng looked around and felt that something was wrong. The trash can was empty. The phone line was unplugged. There were no documents on the desk. This was unusual for a company that had been around for 30 years. Taepeng quietly told Mi-sun not to send faxes or stamp her. Then, Taepeng ran out into the street to chase after the truck. He told Majin not to deliver the goods to Daebang, but Majin thought Taepeng was playing a trick. Taepeng had to lie down in front of the truck. Manbok listened to Majin and tried to drive the truck forward, thinking that Taepeng would be scared and move away. However, Taepeng did not move. The truck stopped just over a meter away from Taepeng. Just then, Mi-sun ran over. It turned out that Daebang had stopped operating for a long time. Workers were pouring into the factory to protest. Mi-sun had seen the news and the workers' petition. After Majin and Manbok discussed it, they decided to take the goods back. Taepeng went with Manbok. Mi-sun was assigned to cancel the contract. Manbok really admired Taepeng's decisiveness. Manbok asked Taepeng if Taepeng wasn't scared just now. Of course Taepeng was scared, but if something happened to that shipment, Taepeng's company would go bankrupt. The company was his father's 26 years of hard work. At Taepeng's company, everyone contacted everywhere to find temporary storage, but everyone demanded payment in advance. No one was willing to lend money. Banks and finance companies also refused to lend money. Trucks couldn't keep running around forever. Drivers started to want to unload their cargo in the middle of the road. Taepeng tried to negotiate, but no one would listen to him. Manbok was moved by the scene. Manbok said that the transportation fee could be postponed, but the drivers were forced to unload their cargo. In these times, everyone was having a hard time. The parking lot used to be full, but now it was empty. Taepeng heard that and immediately asked if there was a parking fee here. Manbok replied that everyone was unemployed now, so there was no one to collect fees. An idea popped into Taepeng's head. Taepeng asked them to unload all the goods in the parking lot. Then, Taepeng called Namdo to help. At that time, Namdo was participating in a music competition. After Namdo finished singing, he received a text message from Taepeng. Namdo immediately ran to the parking lot. The two of them arranged the goods neatly in the parking lot. That night, to make sure the goods were not stolen, Taepeng stayed at the parking lot all night. The next morning, when Majin and Mongwan arrived, they found Taepeng so cold that he was about to freeze. Luckily, they finally found the warehouse. The person who provided the warehouse was Baeko. Taepeng was extremely grateful and personally went to thank Baeko. Baeko smiled and said that he and Taepeng's father had a very good relationship, so if Taepeng needed help with anything in the future, Taepeng could just come to Baeko. But behind that friendly appearance, Baeko had his own calculations. When the goods were just unloaded into the warehouse, Taepeng discovered that the warehouse wall had cracks and the roof was punctured. Taepeng immediately objected. Baeko's staff saw this and threatened to cancel the contract. Majin had to smile to make up. He hastily stamped the contract without reading it carefully. After the goods were stored, everyone started to talk about sales. However, although they contacted many knitting factories, no one was willing to buy the goods. While everyone was confused, Mi-sun suddenly had an idea. She suggested that they return the goods. Mi-sun took out the contract and pointed to the clause that stated that if a natural disaster occurred and the quantity and quality of the goods remained unchanged, the company could return the goods with a 15% fee. But a financial crisis is not a natural disaster. Taepeng thought for a moment and then suggested that the company could raise the return fee to 30%. Mi-son calculated and thought that because the exchange rate had doubled, the return fee was 900 won when the contract was signed, but now it was over 1800 won. Even if the 30% fee was taken, the company would still make a profit. If the partner did not agree, the company could threaten to sell the fabric to the market at half price. This would cause smell, the price of the fabric to plummet and not be able to recover. Textile factories would certainly not dare to take such a risk. Everyone in the company thought Taepeng's idea was reasonable, so they immediately sent a fax to the manufacturer in Italy to request a return. Since it was Christmas, everyone was worried that the Italian side would not see the fax, so they all stayed in the office to wait. It was late at night when everyone reluctantly left. Only Taepeng and Mi-son remained. Taepeng was tired and fell asleep right on his desk. Mi-son took her towel and covered Taepeng. Then, Mi-son was about to take the book to put Taepeng under to make him lie more comfortably. At that moment, the fax machine rang. The manufacturer agreed to take back the goods. The whole company burst into happiness. Everyone was happy because they thought they had passed the final hurdle. But the next night, it rained heavily. The thunder startled Taepeng awake. Taepeng suddenly remembered that the shipment in the warehouse. Taepeng was afraid that the goods would get wet, so he quickly rushed out into the rain. When Taepeng arrived, he saw Mi-son there too. She was hugging several rolls of plastic tarps and standing huddled in front of the warehouse door. The key was with Ma Jin. Taepeng had no other choice at this time. Taepeng used all his strength to break the lock. The two of them covered the goods with tarps. A moment later, everyone else also ran over. They struggled all night in the rain and wind. Finally, they saved the entire shipment. When the sky was bright, Son-taek suggested going out to celebrate. When everyone congratulated Taepeng on his birthday, he was very surprised. Taepeng did not understand how everyone knew that today was his birthday. It turned out that the company was established exactly one day after Peng was born. The whole table raised their glasses and sang happy birthday. Taepeng looked at everyone and felt warm in his heart. Everyone thought that the storm had passed, but the real nightmare had only just begun. The next morning, when everyone returned to the warehouse to prepare to return the goods to the Italian side, they found Baeko's people loading the goods onto the truck. Manager Kim came with the contract and said that they had helped those in need, but Taepeng Company did not pay the warehouse rent and did not come to pick up the goods. Therefore, the warehouse side had the right to handle it. Mi-son picked up the contract and looked at it. She found a clause stating that the maximum storage period was 72 hours from the date of request. If the tenant does not pay the rent or does not renew, all the goods will be confiscated or destroyed. After reading the contract, Taepeng immediately went to Baeko. Taepeng pointed at the contract and said that this was clearly fraud. But Baeko was not ashamed to say that if Taepeng's company had carefully read the contract and received the goods on time, nothing would have happened. It was Taepeng and everyone else's fault for being careless. Taepeng was shaking with anger. Taepeng tried to look at other contracts to prove that Baeko had set a trap from the beginning, but Taepeng was stopped by Baeko's men. The security guard rushed in and dragged Taepeng out. At this time, Taepeng's company was in turmoil. The news of the company's imminent bankruptcy spread throughout the business world. In the evening, Taepeng walked out of the office dejectedly. Taepeng saw that Mi-son was still there. She smiled and gave Taepeng a small gift. Mi-son wished him a happy birthday. Taepeng felt that this birthday was unforgettable. When he got home, Taepeng's mother had already prepared a birthday cake. She had gone to pawn a designer bag to buy a cake for her son. When Taepeng and his mother had just blown out the candles, there was a loud knocking on the door. It turned out to be the creditor coming to collect the money. The two held their breaths and listened to the footsteps fading away. Taepeng asked his mother if they should run away like Junsung's family. Taepeng's mother replied that no matter how hard her life was, she did not want to live like a heartless person. After Taepeng's company was cheated out of its goods by Baeko, the company's last hope was gone. Everyone resigned one by one. Son-taek gave Taepeng a request to temporarily suspend business. After that, Son-taek told Taepeng to find a way to give up his inheritance and file for bankruptcy. Taepeng tried to hold on, but everyone had a family to take care of. Taepeng took the documents to the tax office, but in the end, Taepeng did not submit an application for dissolution, but instead applied for a change of legal entity. When Taepeng walked out of the tax office, he went to Mi-son. Taepeng asked Mi-son if she was willing to stay and work for Taepeng Company. She nodded vigorously. Taepeng officially became the director, and Mi-son was appointed as the head of the sales department. Meanwhile, Baeko tricked Taepeng Trading into taking goods, but Baeko could not find a buyer. That day, Taepeng took the initiative to meet Baeko and told him that the Italian manufacturer had agreed to return the goods. Taepeng suggested that Baeko return the goods directly directly to the manufacturer. Beiko was surprised and asked why Taepeng told him the truth. Taepeng only replied that reputation was more important than money. Beiko offered to buy Taepeng company at a high price. Beiko wanted Taepeng to withdraw from the company. Taepeng said that he didn't expect that there would still be people who wanted to buy the empty shell. This proves that the company still has some value. Beiko realized that this young man was not simple. Beiko warned that Taepeng would fail. Taepeng just gently replied that if Beiko had time, he would teach his son how to start a business. Taepeng was learning from his father. No matter how many times Taepeng fell, he would still fly high in the sky. When Taepeng sadly returned to the company, he received a call from Man Bok. It turned out that the day before, when unloading the goods at the parking lot, because the space was full, some of the goods were still on the truck. Man Bok had called the company many times to inform them, but no one answered because everyone thought it was the creditor calling. Taepeng was very happy when he heard this news. Taepeng believed that he could sell all these goods. Meanwhile, Beiko was still calculating. Beiko wanted to return the goods to the Italian side to recover the capital, but before that, Beiko had to sign a contract with Taepeng company. After Beiko considered, he decided to contact Ma Jin, the person who disliked Taepeng the most. Ma Jin immediately stole Taepeng company's documents. Then he signed a contract with Beiko's people, but Beiko didn't know that he had fallen into Taepeng's trap. The supplier's return condition was that the partner had to keep the same quantity and quality of the bumpered goods. The goods in Beiko's hands were not enough. If the supplier found out, they would refuse to accept them. Therefore, Taepeng and Mison came up with a plan to change the unit of measurement in the contract. They would change from meter to yard to hide the shortage. Thanks to the difference in conversion, Beiko would not realize the problem. The problem was how to make Beiko trust and sign the contract. While the two were discussing, Ma Jin suddenly returned to the company. Before that, Taepeng gave everyone a savings book for each employee. It was what Taepeng's father left before he passed away. Because Ma Jin was touched and regretful, he decided to help Taepeng. Ma Jin pretended to betray and acted according to the plan. Ma Jin even accepted bribes from Beiko to make it look real. After that, Ma Jin brought both the savings book and money back to Taepeng. Ma Jin told Taepeng and Mison to be careful. A few days later, the Italian side received the goods and discovered that 10% was missing, so they immediately refused to return the goods. Beiko was furious and took his anger out on department head Han. At that moment, Taepeng called to make an appointment. Taepeng brought a car full of the remaining goods. After that, Taepeng opened the tarpaulin for Beiko to see all the goods. The import price of this shipment was more than 11 million won, but now, Taepeng will sell it to Beiko for 3 times the price. Moreover, the two sides had to transact in cash. Beiko knew clearly that if there was a shortage of goods, the Italian manufacturer would not refund. Beiko not only lost the goods, but also had to pay the shipping fee. After a while of calculating, Beiko had to accept. Taepeng won spectacularly. After Taepeng had the money, he immediately went to see Director Choi to get back the office lease contract. After Mison checked the books, she knew that the company only had about 7 million won left. The amount of money was only enough to last until next month. Taepeng decided to go to Busan to find a new opportunity. Busan at that time was completely different from gloomy Seoul. This city was bustling, vibrant, and full of business opportunities. An enthusiastic partner of the company said that this was an international market where money was everywhere. Chajan went to exchange money and Mison followed to learn. Taepeng walked around the streets. Taepeng was attracted to a small shoe store. Paksu. The shop owner is Juncho, a polite and calm person. When Juncho saw Taepeng intently looking at the shoes, he took out a few samples to introduce. The shoes were so sophisticated that Taepeng was amazed. Taepeng asked Juncho if he wanted to export the shoes, but Juncho just smiled and shook his head, saying that he was not too ambitious with money. After the conversation, Juncho invited Taepeng to visit the factory. When Taepeng witnessed the production process with his own eyes, he immediately signed a purchase contract. Taepeng happily announced this news to Mison, but unexpectedly, she was angry because all the capital should have been used to pay off the debt. Although Taepeng affirmed that he could sell the shoes for 3 times the purchase price, Mison still did not feel happy. Father Jan sided with Mison. She scolded Taepeng and then invited the whole group to eat. During the meal, everyone raised their glasses of wine, but Taepeng only ordered soft drinks. Son immediately grabbed the glass of wine and drank it instead of Taepeng. Father Jan teased that some men in the bar had just complimented Mison on her beauty. After hearing that, Taepeng immediately grabbed the glass of wine and drank it all. Father Jan teased that Taepeng was declaring his sovereignty. That evening, Taepeng and Mison sat enjoying the breeze by the beach. Taepeng used a tree branch to draw draw the words, "I will not make you sad anymore," in the sand. Mi-san looked at those words and smiled. Taepong took her hand and wrote 2 more words. Wish slip. Taepong said that one day he would use it. The two looked at each other and laughed. Mi-san's anger just like that disappeared. But happiness was very short-lived. When Taepong returned from Busan, he discovered that his house had been auctioned. Creditors came and robbed all the valuables. Taepong's mother only kept the wedding ring and the mink coat. Those were the last gifts her husband gave her. Today was Christmas, so the weather was very cold. Taepong and his mother stood in the middle of the road, not knowing where to go. Taepong's mother called her friends for help, but no one wanted to help them. Finally, Taepong took his mother back to the company to sleep. She said that it would be great if they could return to their old house when they woke up. Taepong held his mother's hand and encouraged her that wherever he and his mother were, that was home. Meanwhile, when Baiko heard that Taepong and his mother were being evicted, he smiled sinisterly. It was thought that after so many storms, Taepong could finally start over with his mother, but no one expected that the enemy would not let them go. Early the next morning, when Mi-san came to the company, she saw Taepong and his mother sleeping in the director's office. When Mi-san knew they had nowhere else to go, she let them temporarily move to her house. Unlike the big house Taepong lived in before, Mi-san's house was a tiny traditional house. This place is also far from the city center. Taepong and his mother met Mi-san's younger brother, younger sister, and grandmother who had lost their memory. Although it was difficult for the two of them to adapt to the completely new environment at first, this was also a place to protect them from the rain and wind. Moreover, Mi-san's house also had a warm fireplace. Finally, Taepong and his mother could cover themselves with warm blankets and sleep well. Because Taepong had just experienced a major event in his life, he stayed up all night thinking. Now, Taepong put all his hopes on the batch of safety shoes he had just signed a contract with. The next day, according to the contract, Mi-san transferred the money to buy 500 pairs of safety shoes for Juncho. Next was the waiting period to receive the goods. During this time, Taepong gradually became familiar with all the work at the company, and he also became close to Mi-san. When Mi-san saw that Taepong did not know how to make coffee, she personally taught him. When Mi-san realized she was holding Taepong's hand, she quickly and awkwardly pulled her hand back. Taepong quickly held Mi-san's hand. He was afraid she would be burned by the hot water. Small vibrations between the two began to sprout. To prepare for the upcoming delivery, Taepong and Mi-san began to practice business etiquette. They learned from how to exchange business cards to the order of shaking hands. Both of them studied very carefully. That night, Taepong made 2 cups of coffee in the order Mi-san had instructed. After that, Taepong quietly sat beside Mi-san, watching her sleep under the blanket. But at this time, Mi-san returned from outside. It turned out that the person sleeping under the blanket was not Mi-san, but Song Chung, a former employee of the company. After a while of asking, Mi-san and Taepong knew that Song Chung was preparing for a professional exam on tariffs. During the day, Song Chung went to extra classes, and at night, Song Chung came to the company to use the computer for free. Mi-san argued loudly with Song Chung, but Taepong felt happy because tomorrow was the day Taepong received the goods from Juncho. Early the next morning, Taepong hurried out of the house. Taepong didn't even have time to eat the breakfast his mother had prepared. Before leaving, Taepong promised his mother that after he received the goods, he and his mother would have a full meal together at Nam-do's mother's fried chicken shop. Taepong promised his mother that he would definitely take back the house that belonged to them. The two of them would return to their old life. When Taepong arrived in Busan, the person who received Taepong was still Director Cha-jan. When the two went to the warehouse to receive the goods, they found it completely empty. There wasn't even a pair of safety shoes. Realizing something was wrong, Taepong hurried to Juncho's shoe factory. However, this place was as empty as the warehouse. Taepong discovered Juncho curled up in a corner on the floor. Juncho knelt down and begged Taepong for forgiveness. Father Jan saw that and immediately realized that Juncho had mortgaged all of Taepong's goods to the mafia. He had used the money from Taepong's goods to pay off his debt. Juncho explained that he had only wanted to use the money from the goods to temporarily deal with the debt. He thought he would pay the interest in advance, but in just a few days, the interest skyrocketed. So not only could Juncho not pay off his debt, but he also owed a large amount. Even the factory and store were mortgaged by the bank. Taepong was extremely angry when he heard that, but Juncho brazenly said that if Taepong was angry, he could just beat him up. Taepong knew that beating people was not a good solution, so he planned to go to the police station to report the case. Father Jan stopped him because reporting the case was useless at this point. Because Juncho was bankrupt, he couldn't even pay the electricity bill. Mi-san on this side still didn't know the situation. While waiting for the delivery, she took the opportunity to study business business English, but Mi-san waited for a long time but still did not see the truck carrying safety shoes arrive. Only when she received a text message from Cha-jan did Mi-san know what had happened. That evening, Taepung's mother brought flowers to Namdo's mother's fried chicken shop. At this time she still did not know anything. Since Namdo's mother was fired from the bank, she opened this shop to make a living. When Taepung's mother saw her busy in the shop, Taepung's mother only felt that she was useless. At night, Taepung waited for his mother at the corner of the street. Taepung still smiled and did not complain a word, even though Taepung's heart was filled with resentment. But Taepung's mother had guessed that her son's business was not going well. Taepung's mother blamed herself for being a useless mother. Even so, she still hoped that if Taepung felt tired, he could rely on his mother at any time. In front of his mother's gentleness, Taepung finally burst into tears. Taepung confessed that he had lost everything. Taepung was completely clueless about how to continue on the road ahead. In the cold night, Taepung snuggled into his mother's arms and sobbed. At this moment, his mother's arms were probably the biggest source of comfort for him. Meanwhile, Namdo was also racing against life. Namdo spent the whole day helping his mother at the fried chicken shop. That night, a girl came to the fried chicken shop to work part-time. She was harassed by some customers. Namdo immediately stepped in to protect the girl. As a result, Namdo fought with those customers. During the fight, Namdo recognized the girl as the one who had participated in the dating show the day before. So the next day, Namdo went to the shopping mall where the girl worked. Namdo gave her a cute cooler bag. Namdo didn't know when he had liked her. Coincidentally, that girl was Mi-san's younger sister named Miho. To ease the family's hardship, Miho went to work as an elevator attendant at the mall. Every day, she had to stand and smile to welcome elevator passengers. Sometimes, Miho even met rude people. They pushed her out of the elevator, but in front of her sister, Miho always hid her sadness. Every time Mi-san asked, Miho said that this job was very good. Mi-san felt sorry for her sister, because Miho was only 21 years old, but already understood things like that. Fortunately, a turning point appeared for Mi-san and Taeyong. That night, Father John helped find the whereabouts of the safety shoes. In fact, all the shoes had been mortgaged by Jun Cho to a loan shark. He declared that if Taepung paid 5 million won, the boss would return the shoes to Taepung. Mi-san promised, on Taepung's behalf, that she would meet the gang boss and return the money. To get the money, Taepung frantically called and borrowed money everywhere. But at this time, no one would lend money to a small and medium-sized enterprise in crisis. When Taepung was worried, Mi-san suddenly gave him 3 million won. This was the money from the savings book that Taepung's father left for the company's employees. Mi-san saved a little more herself. Although Taepung did not want to receive this money, Mi-san put it in his hand. She had received Taepung's father's intention. The most important thing now was to get their goods back. After a while of being advised by Mi-san, Taepung finally decided to accept the money. The next day, he set off to Busan with the intention of getting the goods back. Before Taepung met the gangster boss, Cha-jan reminded Taepung that the gangster boss was not easy to deal with. Taepung only needed to give the money to the other party and then take the goods. Taepung absolutely could not cause trouble. After Cha-jan finished instructing, she took Taepung to meet the gangster boss. Before handing over the money, Taepung went into the warehouse to check the goods first. Unexpectedly, Taepung met Hun-chun again here. It turned out that the boss intended to transfer the entire shipment of shoes to Hun-chun's company. While talking, Taepung noticed bloodstains on the floor. Following the bloodstains, Taepung discovered Jun Cho was seriously injured. Hun-chun walked over and mocked Jun Cho's stupidity. Taepung still did not respect his enemy as usual. Taepung warned Hun-chun not to be too arrogant. Because Taepung did not return, Cha-jan intended to give 5 million won to the boss. At this moment, Taepung returned and cancelled the transaction. Taepung declared that he had no intention of doing business with these gangsters. Taepung angrily asked the gangster boss how much money Jun Cho owed him that he was beaten so brutally. Taepung replied that it was a total of 70 million won. Taepung declared that he would sell 7,000 pairs of safety shoes, and Taepung would pay the boss a total of 100 million won. The boss did not believe him, so he asked Taepung to sign a commitment document, and Taepung had to use his 2 eyes as collateral. At this point, Hun-chun agreed to withdraw from the deal, but if Taepung failed to keep his promise, Hun-chun would be the one to take one of Taepung's eyes. Taepung was not afraid. Taepung rubbed his hand in the red ink, then placed his entire hand on the contract. This action marked the beginning of a difficult life-and-death battle. That night, Taepung and Cha-jan helped Jun Cho home. Jun Cho was beaten by loan sharks until his face was bruised. At the front door, Jun Cho quietly asked Father Jang to borrow some powder to cover up the wound because he didn't want his little daughter to worry. Although Christmas had passed, Father Jan still dressed Jun Cho as Santa Claus. boss. Juncho also gave his daughter a Christmas present, making her scream with joy. Seeing Juncho and her father happy together, Taepeng couldn't help but be moved. Taepeng quietly walked out and called Mi-sun. Taepeng told her that now he was starting to have expectations. Taepeng hoped to find things that seemed to not exist, such as justice and kindness in this job. Mi-sun quietly told Taepeng to look up at the night sky. Taepeng smiled and said that it was too dark for him to see any stars. However, things that can't be seen don't mean they don't exist. When Taepeng heard those words, he suddenly felt relieved. At this time, Taepeng was more confident than ever. Tonight was New Year's Eve. The countdown was heard on TV. It signaled the moment of transition to the new year. Mi-sun gently tore off the old calendar page. The year 1999 officially began. On the morning of the second day of the Lunar New Year, Taepeng and Juncho carried 7,000 pairs of safety shoes back to Seoul. When Mi-sun knew about this, she was extremely angry because they had originally only planned to buy 500 pairs. The main customers of this type of shoe were construction companies. However, at this time, a series of domestic projects were stalled, so selling 7,000 pairs of shoes was very difficult. Exporting them abroad was even more difficult. When Mi-sun got angry, Cha-jan pulled her aside to talk privately. Cha-jan understood that Mi-sun was not worried because the company might go bankrupt, but because Taepeng had made a dangerous decision on his own, Cha-jan gently reminded Mi-sun that Taepeng was the one responsible for everything, and even if this fails, Taepeng will be the one to suffer the consequences, so Mi-sun doesn't need to worry too much. Then Cha-jan asked Mi-sun why she chose to work at Taepeng's company. Mi-sun replied that it was because of her dream. Just then, Taepeng walked in. Cha-jan told Mi-sun to pursue her dream. Then she quietly left. Because Mi-sun was still angry, Taepeng took her hand and wrote the word wish on her palm. Taepeng's wish tonight was simply that Mi-sun could forgive him. Faced with that somewhat childish appearance, Mi-sun finally laughed. The anger disappeared in the warm gaze between the two. Taepeng intended to tell Mi-sun about how he used his eyes to sign a contract with the boss. But before Taepeng could say anything, Mi-sun spoke first, saying that she only hoped Taepeng would always be safe and healthy. If Taepeng wasn't hurt, she wouldn't be angry anymore. Taepeng heard that and stopped. Taepeng didn't say anything more about the eyes, but he turned to tease Mi-sun to ease the atmosphere. While Taepeng was talking to Mi-sun, he suddenly remembered Juncho's strange expression. Tonight, Juncho slept at Taepeng's company, but when Taepeng thought about Juncho's words before going to bed, he suddenly felt uneasy. Taepeng didn't have time to think, so he immediately rushed back to the company to check. Sure enough, the sleeping place was empty. Juncho had escaped. Taepeng hurried to the bus station and caught Juncho buying a ticket to a small island. He intended to throw everything away to run away. When Juncho was stopped by Taepeng, Juncho admitted that he intended to escape to the island. A few years later, when the situation improved, he would return. At first, Juncho thought Taepeng was very rich, so he dared to buy 7,000 pairs of safety shoes. Unexpectedly, when Juncho arrived at the company, he knew that Taepeng's company only had one employee. Juncho sighed and said that Taepeng was too naive. Currently, both the domestic and international markets are in crisis. It was impossible to sell all those shoes before the deadline. Taepeng listened to Juncho's words, but Taepeng's eyes still contained determination. Taepeng had no intention of giving up. At least they had to try their best. They couldn't give up so quickly. While the two were arguing, a truck full of imported flowers from Europe passed by. At this time, an idea flashed in Taepeng's mind. The domestic market was deadlocked, and the Asian market was also not feasible. So why don't they try to expand to Europe and America? Maybe that's the way out they're looking for. To prepare for this bold sales campaign, with the help of Juncho and everyone, Taepeng filmed a promotional video for safety shoes. In the video, Taepeng wears shoes and walks on a carpet covered with broken glass. This scene looks like a circus performance. Taepeng strides confidently. He's so cool that everyone is amazed. After Taepeng finished filming the video, Mi-sun realized that his wrist was slightly scratched. She personally applied bandages to it. After that, Mi-sun also gave Taepeng half of a red bean bun. This made the atmosphere between the two of them warmer. Next, it was Juncho, Namdo, and Mi-sun's turn. 3 people. The scene introduces the production process and safety of safety shoes. After everything was done, the group packaged the promotional tapes together. Then they took the finished product to the post office to send it everywhere, from companies in Europe to America. Taepeng also personally brought the advertising tape to foreign companies based in Seoul. Some places threw the advertising tape straight into the trash as soon as they received it, but some places paid attention to this thoughtful advertising video. Not long after, their efforts were finally rewarded. A company in South America took notice of Taepeng's safety shoes. Taepeng and Mi-sun were invited to the company's branch in Korea Korea to introduce the product. Before the presentation, Mi-san was extremely nervous. She kept mumbling her speech, even though she had memorized it last night. Taepong gently adjusted Mi-san's bow tie. Taepong softly reassured her. Taepong believed that even though today was a big challenge, Mi-san was the best employee in the company, so she would definitely do it. Thanks to those words of encouragement, Mi-san gradually got rid of her anxiety. She confidently stepped up and gave an impressive presentation. Now, both of them just had to wait for the results. At the same time, Namdo went to the shopping mall to pick up Miho from work. Every night, Namdo patiently waited there. He always gave Miho small, cute heating pads. When the two of them got close to Miho's house, Mi-san and Taepong had just arrived. Miho quickly pulled Namdo to the side of the road. When the other two had gone, Namdo mustered up all his courage to give Miho a gift. It was a box of paper cranes that Namdo folded himself. Then Namdo boldly promised that he would become rich for her. Miho was touched and gently kissed Namdo on the cheek. This kiss made Namdo so happy that he was stunned. Namdo promised that from now on, the two of them would meet every day. That night, his mother cooked a delicious meal for Taepong. While eating, Taepong suddenly noticed that his mother's fingers were covered with bandages. She just said that it was an accident while doing housework. However, Taepong did not know that his mother had secretly gone to work at the sewing factory. Because Taepong's mother had never done this job before, she sewed slower than others, and she often scratched and bled her fingertips. Luckily, the factory owner did not fire Taepong's mother. She only asked her to come half an hour earlier to meet the deadline. Today, Taepong's mother received her first salary. Although the amount was not much, she was still extremely happy because finally, Taepong's mother could share the burden with her son. Taepong and Mi-san worked with their hearts never at peace. The two of them worked while anxiously waiting for news. After several long, nervous days, the phone finally rang. Mi-san hurriedly picked up the phone, her voice trembling with tension. Then, immediately after, she burst into a bright smile. They received the order. At that moment, both of them were so happy that they burst out laughing. Then they clapped their hands together, as if they wanted to share their happiness. When Taepong looked at the contract from the European partner that had just been signed, he was very emotional. This was the first time in his life that he had actually sold something. At this moment, Taepong was able to make his father proud, and he had also defeated himself. However, the joy did not last long when another incident occurred. The shipping company suddenly blacklisted Taepong's company. At the same time, they canceled the loading of the goods onto the ship. Taepong immediately went to investigate and quickly discovered that behind this was Hun Chun's dirty trick. The situation became worse when that same evening, the gangster boss came to threaten Taepong and Juncho. Now, the payment deadline was less than a month away. If the company did not ship the goods overseas in time, Taepong's eyes would leave his body. Only then did Mi-san know that Taepong had used her eyes as collateral. She was shocked and then extremely angry. Mi-san could not understand Taepong's reckless actions. To her, Taepong's company was a business, not a charity. Taepong should not act impulsively to save people. Taepong was betting the company's fate. Taepong said that he had never considered the company's business a joke, but no matter the circumstances, when Taepong stood before someone in desperate need of help, he could not ignore it. Taepong's voice was both firm and sincere. So even though Mi-san was still angry, she could not refute. She understood that kindness was what made Taepong different from everyone she had ever met. When night fell, the two went to the seafood market together and found fishing boats anchored nearby. Taepong suddenly had a glimmer of hope. After asking around, they knew that there was a fishing boat called One Yang. It could travel anywhere in the world. Taepong and Mi-san immediately went to find the captain to ask if they could transport the safety shoes overseas. However, all they got was cold water splashed in their faces. The two had no choice but to ask Father Jan for help. Father Jan warned them that using a fishing boat was no different from smuggling, but because the situation was so urgent, Taepong no longer cared about the method. Fortunately, Father Jan knew the captain of the fishing boat called One Yang. Father Jan invited the captain to meet Taepong that same day. After the conversation, Taepong happened to know that the captain had been very close to his father in the past. Out of respect for their old friendship, the captain agreed to help transport the shipment for Taepong. However, the problem was that although the goods could be delivered, there was no one to receive them. Since this was smuggling, it could not be done openly. At this time, Juncho expressed his willingness to go with the ship. Juncho had graduated from Maritime University and had several years of experience working on oil tankers. The remaining problem was how to get 5,000 pairs of safety shoes onto the ship without being detected. Taepong quickly thought of a way to hide the safety shoes in styrofoam boxes containing frozen seafood. After that, Taepong gathered fishermen at the port to carry the export containers onto the ship. What Taepong was most worried about at this time was Juncho, because the trip was very long and he had a small child. Juncho pledged to do his best for Taepong and the company, because Taepong had risked his life for Juncho. This time Juncho wanted to do his best to repay Taepong, and Juncho promised that when the two met again, he would become a trustworthy brother. While everyone was talking, suddenly the police siren sounded. The captain hurriedly urged Taepong to hide in the ship's hold. It turned out that someone had reported to the police that the Wanyang cargo ship was suspicious. The police asked the crew to present their identification papers and departure declarations. When Taepong realized that the goods were about to be searched, he told Juncho to find a way to distract the police. Taepong would take care of the rest. Juncho hurriedly ran out to invite the police for coffee. Taking advantage of the opportunity, Taepong hugged a bag of goods and jumped onto the small fishing boat. Then, Taepong frantically threw the powder inside the bag everywhere. Taepong even put the powder in his mouth. Taepong looked like a drug addict. Sure enough, Taepong's actions attracted the attention of the police. Everyone thought that Taepong was using drugs. However, when the police looked closely with binoculars, they realized that it was just flour. The police thought they had encountered a troublemaker, so they canceled the ship inspection. Taepong saw the police leave, and the ship continued to depart. Taepong turned to Juncho, raising his hand to make a shoe advertisement gesture. This scene made Juncho boil with enthusiasm. Juncho also responded with his classic gesture. However, before Taepong could breathe a sigh of relief, he was tied up by the captain of the small ship because he thought Taepong was an intruder with bad intentions. At that moment, the gangsters led by Hugo also came to cause trouble. Hugo asked Taepong if he had transported goods onto the ship because this was related to his ability to recover the money he had lent Hugo was also accompanied by Hun Chun, but Hun Chun only came to watch the situation. Hugo threatened to push Taepong into the sea, but Taepong was not afraid of death. Hugo saw Taepong being so reckless, so he immediately let Taepong go. Hun Chun was angry and said rude words to Hugo. Hugo immediately threatened to cut off Hun Chun's ear to stop him from being so arrogant. Hun Chun heard that and could only angrily leave. Meanwhile at the port, Mi-san and Cha-jan waited for a long time, but still did not see Taepong's figure. Their hearts were pounding as if they were sitting on a pile of fire. Both of them began to fear that Taepong had fallen into the sea. At this moment, Mi-san did not have time to think. She immediately grabbed the lifebuoy and was about to jump into the water. But at that moment, a familiar voice called from afar. Taepong was standing on the deck of the fishing boat waving his hand. Mi-san saw that scene and almost cried with joy. When Taepong just set foot on the shore, Mi-san rushed to hug him. Cha-jan, standing next to him, could only laugh softly. She joked that Taepong should go find a room. Only when Cha-jan patted Mi-san's shoulder did she suddenly let go of Taepong. She was confused and didn't know where to hide her hand. On the way home, Mi-san tried to pretend to be calm. She walked and talked nonsense while beating the village drum. Taepong noticed that Mi-san's hand was scratched, but she just softly replied that she was fine. Taepong suddenly confessed that he had fallen in love with Mi-san. Even though she dressed a bit sloppily, Taepong still found her very pretty. Even when Mi-san was angry or smiling, she was still extremely adorable. Faced with Taepong's straightforward confession, Mi-san was both shy and confused. She bowed her head and smiled slightly, because Mi-san also knew that she had fallen in love with Taepong. Thanks to this fishing boat shipment, Taepong completed the safety shoe deal with the Mexican partner, and Taepong earned the first large sum of money in his life. That day, Taepong brought money to pay off Hugo's debt. Hugo also handed over the contract with Taepong's fingerprint. From that moment on, all debts between the two parties were officially erased. For the first time after many storms, Taepong truly won a resounding victory. In contrast to Taepong, Hun Chun was being scolded by his father because after Hun Chun's failed investment, his family company suffered a huge loss. Baekho angrily cursed Hun Chun as useless. Baekho also said that Hun Chun was not as talented as Taepong. Baekho also emphasized that when Hun Chun truly grew up, he should dream of imitating others. After Taepong sold 5,000 pairs of safety shoes, he began to think about the next direction for the company. Taepong went to the export exhibition to look for new business opportunities, but the items displayed there were not in line with the company's direction. While Taepong was searching, he unexpectedly met his close friend, Jun Sung. Jun Sung's family went bankrupt in the past, so the whole family had to flee at night. Today, Jun Sung brought a safety helmet as a gift for Taepong. It turned out that Jun Sung is currently working in a safety helmet factory whose products are mainly exported to the US and Europe. Thanks to that, even though Korea is in a financial crisis, the factory owner still earns a lot of money. After going through the crisis and difficulties, Jun Sung looks much more mature. Jun Sung plans to pay off his debt and buy machinery to produce screws after saving enough money. Taepeng also gave Junsung a pair of safety shoes. When Junsung opened the shoebox, he was very surprised because there was a roll of cash inside. In the safety helmet that Junsung gave, Taepeng also discovered a cleverly hidden bag of money. Junsung just received his salary and wanted to repay Taepeng. Junsung never forgot the person who helped him in the most difficult times. The helmet gave Taepeng a new business idea. However, Taepeng still had no experience and was struggling to find a way to start. At that time, Son-taek suddenly visited the company. After she quit her job at Taepeng's company, she switched to delivering milk and vegetable juice. To make enough sales, Son-taek sold vegetable juice to his old colleagues every day. While Son-taek was selling, she did not forget to convey to Taepeng business skills and perseverance. Those words reminded Taepeng of a fisherman who once taught him that it was okay to not have money or power as long as they had someone by their side. That was enough. When Taepeng thought about that, he decided to summon all the company's former employees. The others were like Son-taek. They were all struggling to make ends meet. Ma Jin was helping his father sell shoes on the street. Ma Jin and his wife had just welcomed their second child, so they had to worry about every penny to buy milk powder. Department head Gu was old and sick, but he still had to work hard every day. Life was like an unhealed wound in the palm of his hand. Songchum still studied hard. Every day, Songchum still hugged a stack of exam papers and yawned in the morning mist. That night, Taepeng went to see Ma Jin. Because life was so difficult, Ma Jin no longer had the strength to resist. He had to live on the living expenses given by his father. Taepeng put the safety helmet that Taepeng planned to sell on Ma Jin's head. Taepeng hoped that Ma Jin would come back and fight together. In fact, all the employees had never forgotten Taepeng Company. The next day, Taepeng and Mi-sun waited in the office. They were full of hope. The first person to return was Ma Jin. Ma Jin held the safety helmet with a smile on his lips. Perhaps, the company's spring began from that moment. Head of department, Go invited the director of the safety helmet factory to the company to discuss cooperation. This product line is similar to the previous safety shoes. They are all high-quality products that meet export standards. After the company finalized the expected order quantity, head of department Go turned to ask which country Taepeng planned to export to. Because the European, American, and Asian markets were already dominated by competitors, Taepeng researched the information and paid special attention to Thailand, which had the highest purchasing power in the region. Although Thailand had experienced a financial crisis, this country recovered earlier than Korea. More importantly, Thailand will soon host the Asian Games, so regulations on wearing helmets will be increasingly tightened. But to penetrate the Thai market, they need to find an intermediary partner with enough prestige and understanding of the area. Head of department Go took advantage of personal relationships. He contacted his cousin, Madong. This person is running a small trading company in Thailand. Thanks to the sincere introduction of the head of the department, Go, Madong agreed to support the Taepeng company. Madong used his existing relationships to help. Before leaving, the head of the department, Go, assigned Mi-sun the task of handling the procedures and making passports for the whole group. Although Mi-sun is now a senior employee, to the head of the department, Mi-sun is still no different from the multi-talented accountant of the past. She is in charge of everything from the books to making tea and pouring water. The head of the department, Go, is a traditional Korean man. He still holds prejudices about women in the workplace. The head of the department, Go, bluntly told Mi-sun that she is not suitable for the business field because, according to the head of the department, jobs like marketing or external transactions are traditionally men's jobs. Mi-sun did not say much. She just looked at the head of the department, Go, with a determined gaze. Mi-sun will let the customers judge for themselves what kind of salesperson she is, and then she will prove it with numbers. When Taepeng noticed the worry in Mi-sun's eyes, he gently reassured her. Taepeng affirmed that Mi-sun was a senior employee of the company, and no one was redundant in the company. The next day, to prepare for the trip, Taepeng borrowed a few suitcases from Nam-do. Then, Taepeng brought a small suitcase to Mi-sun's room. At that time, she was sitting attentively, studying Thai. However, the contemptuous words of department head Go still made Mi-sun ponder. Doubts arose in her heart. Mi-sun wondered if she was a burden to the company. Taepeng immediately reassured Mi-sun that he felt much more secure with her accompanying him. The next day, the two of them went to take passport photos together. Taepeng gently fixed Mi-sun's hair. He smiled and complimented her on how pretty she looked. Taepeng also deliberately joked to make her laugh naturally in front of the camera. Mi-sun was excited about her first trip to Thailand. Before the departure day, she meticulously sharpened pencils and folded clothes for her siblings. After that, Mi-sun opened the lid of the rice cooker to check again. When Taepeng's mother saw this scene, she comforted her that Mi-sun's siblings were all grown up and knew how to take care of themselves. themselves, so Mi-san didn't need to worry too much. When the three of them arrived in Thailand, they were warmly welcomed by Ma Dong, department head. Go solemnly introduced director Tae-pong, but department head Go only briefly introduced that Mi-san was an employee of the company. She felt uncomfortable when she saw that. Ma Dong arranged a temporary office for them. After that, Ma Dong also invited them to dinner with spicy tom yum. The atmosphere was quite comfortable at first, until Ma Dong mentioned that his company had a shipment arriving at the port tomorrow. This could be a good opportunity for them to get acquainted with the local customs. Mi-san seemed very excited. However, Ma Dong said that his car would be a bit cramped if all four of them went. When Chief Go heard this, he pushed Mi-san aside. He announced that only he and Tae-pong would go. Mi-san's excitement faded, but she refused to be left out of the trip. Chief Go could not hide his annoyance. He asked Mi-san what she could do even if she went. It was true that in terms of transaction experience, Mi-san could not compare to Chief Go. When the atmosphere became tense, Tae-pong tried to ease the situation. Tae-pong suggested that he would stay at the company so that Chief Go and Mi-san could go. However, this only made Chief Go more upset. He thought that Tae-pong was too biased towards Mi-san. Mi-san felt offended by this treatment. She made an excuse of being tired and stood up to go back to her room. A while later, Tae-pong brought food back to Mi-san's room. She was still angry and blamed Tae-pong for being too nice to her. It was that concern that made her criticized by Chief Go, and everyone misunderstood that Mi-san was favored. Tae-pong explained that his feelings for her were completely private. It had nothing to do with work, and Tae-pong did not expect anything in return. Tae-pong gently reminded that Mi-san had done very well, so she did not need to be self-conscious or worried. The next day, Chief Go deliberately locked the door. He did not want Mi-san to go out. Mi-san was not easy to bully. She used all her strength to open the door and said bluntly that Chief Go's actions were childish. When the four of them arrived at the port, Mi-san was busy taking photos to supplement the report. Chief Go saw this and made fun of her. He thought that Mi-san only knew how to do useless things. At the customs office, Mi-san witnessed Chief Go secretly stuffing a $50 bill into a cigarette pack. He intended to bribe the customs officer. He even smugly called it a sales talent. Mi-san immediately protested, but Chief Go ignored it and continued to mock Mi-san, saying that she was only good at doing unnecessary things. She did not have the qualities of a real salesperson. Chief Go also affirmed that the previous success of the safety shoe deal was entirely thanks to Tae-pong, and Mi-san was simply lucky. In less than half a day, Mi-san had to listen to one sarcastic remark after another. She was very upset but still tried to stay calm because she did not want to lose face for the company. That evening, Ma Dong invited the whole group to a nightclub to socialize with partners, but Mi-san and Chief Go were still tense. Tae-pong sternly asked both of them to attend because this was work, not personal. Mi-san tried to regain her composure. She chose an elegant dress and walked towards Tae-pong. The reflected lights made Mi-san even more radiant. When Tae-pong saw her, his eyes lit up. Tae-pong put a small bracelet on Mi-san. Tae-pong said that she looked very beautiful. At the nightclub with lively music, Ma Dong pointed to a beautiful Thai girl and said that she was the youngest daughter of the director of a large corporation. Not long after, that girl came to greet Tae-pong. The girl smiled friendly and invited Tae-pong to the stage to sing. When the music started, Tae-pong quickly attracted everyone's attention. His confident demeanor made Tae-pong look like a real star. But in the midst of that bustling atmosphere, Mi-san only felt small and lost. She quietly stood up and left the nightclub in silence. Tae-pong searched for her everywhere. And finally, Tae-pong found Mi-san sitting quietly by the pool. Mi-san said that her leg hurt. Tae-pong heard that and gently bandaged her ankle with a handkerchief. Mi-san confided that she didn't feel tired, but she just felt a little sad because she realized that she couldn't be of any help on this trip. Tae-pong smiled when he heard that. Tae-pong told Mi-san the motto of life that he learned from his father. Flowers bloom not for their beauty, but to wait for fruit. Tae-pong hoped that Mi-san would also know how to wait. She didn't need to prove anything because for Tae-pong, Mi-san was already good enough. Those words made the gloom in Mi-san's heart gradually disappear. That night, by the pool with sparkling lights, Tae-pong sang softly to her. Tae-pong's voice was gentle and warm. It was a night that Mi-san would never forget. However, the joy didn't last long. That night, the three were suddenly arrested by the police for investigation. Thanks to his good English skills, Sun quickly found out the cause. It all started with the $50 bill that department head Go secretly gave to the customs officer. After the police checked the surveillance camera, they confirmed that department head Go was the one who bribed. He was immediately detained to serve the investigation. Department head Go was like someone trying to use an old key to open a high-tech gate. Department head Go believed that the $50 bill was the key to the art of business. It was a little trick that had helped him survive in the business world. world. However, Department Head Go did not realize that times had changed. In the modern international environment, that gate not only had a lock, but also was equipped with surveillance cameras and ethics. As a result, when Department Head Go just inserted the key into the lock, the system immediately activated the alarm, so he was handcuffed on the spot, while Mi-sun and Taipeng had to suffer the consequences. From a business trip that was expected to open up new opportunities, Taipeng Company is now in crisis in Thailand. The first 8 episodes of today's drama are over here. See you again in the next episodes of the drama.